You know, we're taught in this world that we get paid for the risk we take in life. And the greater the risk, the greater the pay. And in some circles, that's true. Uh, but in some, it's not. When you bet on a risky stock in the market, you risk losing all your money. And when you risk betting on a long shot at the racetrack, you risk losing all your money. But if those risks pan out, you gain a lot of money. And most of you would say, I wish I put more money into it, not knowing it was going to pan out. Bet more on the long shot, bet more on the risky stock and put more into it. Because when it pays off in a great way. Uh, you know, um, an 80 to 1 horse, that's some real money, you know. But it's very rare that 80 to 1 horse is going to make you that money. That's why it's an 80 to 1 horse. But um, now in movies, actors take risks when they sign up for a movie. When it comes to their pay, uh, do they take a lower paycheck to be a part of a movie that might become the biggest movie in their career, uh, which will lead to other movies in their career because of their involvement in this movie? And so they took a lower pay, but they got bigger pays in the other movies that followed. So they had to take a risk. Now, if they don't take the movie because the pay is low, then they might not get the future movies that would have brought. Donald Sutherland, an actor in Animal House, he was offered, when they signed him up for the movie, he was offered $3 million base pay. That was all he was going to get to do the movie. $3 million. And then back then, uh, $3 million was a lot of money, especially for shooting a movie. So it wasn't a bad paycheck. I mean, now you would think it's robbery, but it's not now. It's then, and then it was good. But he was also offered a lower salary. I don't know what it was exactly, maybe a couple of $100,000. But he was offered 10% royalty on the movie. And it was 100,000 and a 10% royalty. So that means he had to bet on that movie becoming the classic that it is today. And having had not made the movie yet, that was a risky bet. To walk away from $3 million and only accept like 100,000 uh, was a risky bet. Now he took the 3 million, which turned out to be a stupid choice. So he didn't risk. He didn't take a risk, and he would have been a multi millionaire if he would have took the royalty from that movie alone. And he kicks himself every day for not taking the deal. It's like betting on a horse at a racetrack, and you take the 2 to 1, and the 80 to 1 wins, and 2 to 1 pays nothing. Uh, and that's what he did, and he didn't win. He lost big time. Animal House became one of the biggest movies on the planet. So you know, now we take that further into love. Uh, when you go up to a really pretty woman, uh, or who society thinks is a pretty woman, you take a risk. You take a risk of being shot down. You, you take a risk of not being shot down, and she accepts you, uh, but later on breaks your heart when she accepts someone else. And so, that can be more painful than being turned down. Uh, just because you get a date with a woman doesn't mean you're going to see her again. Doesn't mean she's going to give you a second date or a third date or a fourth date. She might give you 100 dates and then say, well, this is the last date. So just because you have someone doesn't mean you have them forever. And you shouldn't go into it with that mindset that you have them forever. Uh, People are free, and people, well, they think they're free. They're not free, but they think they're free. And you need to treat them like they're free. They're free to come and go and sleep with whoever they want. And if they don't sleep with anybody else but you, then that's a bonus. You know, when you have a very pretty or society pretty woman, she can sleep with hundreds of men. I'm not saying she will. I'm not saying she wants to. I'm just saying she can. And, a lot of those women don't get asked to the prom, don't get asked uh, to go out at night because so many people think they're already taken. They would, they're not going to say yes. Uh, myriad of reasons, myriad of reasons why they don't get asked out. You know, and I love pretty women, but a lot of pretty women are pretty on the outside and not pretty on the inside. And they look at the world differently than other women. They have a different outlook, perspective. They see men in a different way. They see sides of men that other women don't see. Wow. Man, the devil's trying to shut me up. They get harassed by men in ways that other women don't, and when they're in a room alone with a man, it can be a very scary situation, and for the woman, and they don't like it, and why women travel in pairs, uh, but and women amongst the women, the pretty women are usually vilified and they're not allowed to be around certain boyfriends or husbands because they're pretty, and they don't like the fact that this husband is looking at my friend like a piece of meat, and so it's risky, and they don't want to take the risk. You know, she might be a very nice person and have no intentions of at all to sleep with your husband, but you don't want to take the risk, and be wrong and be found to be wrong, and it's hard, but it kind of tells you what kind of husband you have, if you can't trust them around her. And there are men that you can trust around beautiful women not to uh, hit on them or try to have sex with them. Um, there are respectable men out there. I mean, they're far and few, but there are. and it's hard to weed them out, you know. And you never know what happens behind closed doors, and that's the devil that lives in the back of your head. Did he say this? Did he do this? And that's why when women falsely accuse people of rape and stuff like that, it's so damaging. Yeah, and they do it, and they do. And that's why I say pretty women are pretty on the outside and not pretty on the inside. And a lot of them make false claims. Uh, Now, uh, they do it for a myriad of reasons. Um, Usually to take power of a situation. Um, Maybe they have a perceived slight that they want to revenge. Uh, it's just a whole myriad of reasons why they make false claims. And I'm not saying they all are false claims, not in any way, shape, or form, but there are. And some pretty women are very sick, sick women. And they've been abused by men, most likely. They have a history, and it's part of why they're sick. Um, their mother abused them. It could be anything. I mean, I don't want to box it in and say this is the only reason why. It's not. Uh, a lot of women are damaged by their mother more than anything, and they blame the father. You know, so meanwhile the father did nothing. And again, it's risk. It's risk. Who do I allow into my life to love and to find out she's a single white female? And or the babysitter from hell, um, or the nanny from hell. And anytime you invite someone into your life, male or female, opposite sex or same sex, is risky. And they make movies and plays and Broadway shows over all the risks and all the different myriad of risks that are involved. And the more you see those shows and movies and stuff, the more you feel uneasy, and we're all looking for that 80 to 1 horse, and they're very hard to find. You know, it's not hard to find an 80 to 1 horse, it's hard to find one that wins. And, to find a man that doesn't cheat, loves you dearly, and would do anything in the world for you, that's an 80 to 1 horse that wins. And the man that's going to sleep with you and not call you in the morning, that's the 2 to 1, you know. And, you know, it's, but you have to take a risk on yourself, you know. Tom Cruise made Risky Business. Funny, the name is Risky Business, is the name of the movie he made. It was really his first movie. And he made it for nothing. He got like nothing as far as pay to make the movie. And, the movie was a success. But it could have just as easily been a flop, and killed his career instead of making him who he is today. But he made pretty much $0 on that movie, and now he makes uh, a couple of 100 million to make a Mission Impossible. You know, but he bet on himself. He didn't bet on the movie. He bet on himself to make it a good movie because he thought himself was a good actor, and he thought that he could make the movie a good movie, and he did, and he did, and he won. obviously. But, you know, um, the greatest, the problem is, though, is a lot of people won't take a risk unless there's a guaranteed payoff. It's like your boss will tell you to do something, and you're like, well, how much am I going to get paid? And what if it doesn't work out? And all those questions come up. But the greatest payoffs are the risks that have no guaranteed payoff. Steve Jobs bet on Apple. Uh, no guaranteed payoff, but you know, I think it was safe to say that computers were going to change the world, but they hadn't at that time. And who knew that Apple was going to be the computer company that it is today? And they fired him. I mean, that's how bad it got. And he started the company. He was the CEO and the board, and they fired him. So they brought him back when the company floundered when he was gone. So, and he didn't quit. He didn't quit making computers, even though Apple fired him. He went on and made another computer company and made a game system. You know, so and he learned a lot from those other companies and brought that to Apple as well. So, uh, but he had no guarantee of payoff. He was working in his garage, and that's where he started. And eventually, it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. And you know, like you take Bill Gates, he stole everything from Apple. He stole everything from Steve Jobs. Windows was stolen from Steve Jobs, and you know, it wasn't the risk that Apple took because Microsoft knew that Windows was going to be popular, and that's why they open sourced it. Whereas they allowed Dell and HP and Compaq and all the other companies to use Windows, where Apple didn't do that. Apple kept Apple in Apple, and iOS was Apple, and they did that because they didn't create it. Microsoft didn't create Windows. Apple did. And when you don't create something, you don't treat it the same way. It's like owning the 81 horse, 80 to 1 horse, owning the 81 horse and training the 81 horse and just betting on the 80 to 1 horse. And Microsoft bet on the 80 to 1 horse. And Apple made and bred and trained the 80 to 1 horse. And that's the difference. And they had a much more investment in it. Now, Bill Gates, his father worked for IBM, so he had an in to the computer world that most people didn't have. And it was tied around MS-DOS, and it started with MS-DOS, and it just grew from there. But without that into IBM, we might not have the words Microsoft, or not know them as we know them today. So, never be afraid to take a risk. I'm not saying take stupid risks, uh, but realize that if you don't take a risk, and sometimes betting on an 80 to 1 horse might seem really stupid. And, you know, everybody thought Noah was crazy when he was building the boat until it started to rain. And then it was like, oh, can I get on board? It's like, no, you can't. You're the one who poo-pooed me the whole time I was doing this, and now you want a spot on the boat. So, you know, take risks, live life, and you will prosper.